Oh,
It's just kicking into the live stream. Just give it a
Okay,
few
sure.
seconds here and we'll let you know.
okay, it looks like it's recording. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Great, thank you. So I'm calling to order this regular meeting of council. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on unceded traditional territory of the Sanawas First Nation. Before we get started, I just want to also acknowledge as today is May the 5th, it is basically the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. So this is a day where we honor Canada's missing and murdered Indigenous people. So just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. First item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. So I'll make the motion that the May 5th regular council meeting agenda be adopted with additional items, and I will just quickly switch screens. So we have an item under 13A for the authorization of the Village Core Streetscape Improvements budget. We also have a couple items under 10B, and I think we have under item 9B some additional public input. Is that correct, staff? I think
Yes,
I covered it off.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So do I have a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Savage. Any discussion on the agenda? So Councillor Savage.
Yes, I would just like to move that we move 13A up to the front as near as possible because it's the most timely one on the agenda, please.
Okay, so that'd be 13A. So it's basically through to council. It's everybody following what Councillor Savage is asking. He's asking that this streetscape budget item be moved up. Okay.
Sorry, just for clarity, if you leave it in the place where late items are considered at the end of the meeting, then there may be more staff available to speak to the item. One staff person couldn't join us until 7.
Okay, sure. Well, we're going to have a presentation here shortly, so I trust we're going to get through our agenda in a fairly timely fashion this evening. So if there's any indication that we're, the hour is pressing on and we're not going to make that, we'll definitely, we can basically suspend the agenda at that point and move that item up. So through to Councillor Savage, would that suffice? Just ensuring that we do get to item 13A. Okay. All right. Any additional additions, deletions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. So that takes us on to item 6A under general matters. We have Corey Vanderhorst from Norris Myers Penny to present on our auditor's year-end findings report and the District of Lantzville 2020 financial statements. So through to Corey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, councilors and staff. Thank you for having me here today. I do have a presentation. I'm going to, get this going on the right screen here. Bear with me, some technical, there we go. So I believe you should see the first page of our slide presentation. There we go. That should look better. I am cognizant of a busy agenda you have tonight, so I will go fast through the slides here. I do want to start by saying thank you to Director Slater and the finance team and all the staff at the district for helping out with the audit this year. Another year with remote audit and limited, access to the building, trying to make sure that your team and our team are as safe as possible in the pandemic. So it went fairly smoothly. and that is a testament to your team's readiness and their willingness to work through all the sharing of information and documents. So big thank you to Jamie and your team. So I'll take you through some financial statement highlights, a little bit of, and then a little bit of discussion on the audit, and we'll end with a confirmation of auditor independence. So a reminder that throughout the year, you're getting different financial reports. It might be broken out in some of the different functions and services that the district is providing. But when I talk about the numbers tonight, this is on a consolidated basis. All these funds, all the functions of the district brought together, water, sewer, other capital assets, the general operations, and everything shown together as one. So starting with the balance sheet or the statement of financial position at the end of December 31st, you can see cash and investments have increased a little bit, 8.3 million to 9 million. Total financial assets are up from about 12.5 to 14.1. There is new debt for the sewer project, $4.3 million of debt drawn during the year. So when we take the financial assets, subtract off, the total liabilities then of 10.1 million. And when you subtract the total liabilities from the total financial assets, you get a net financial asset position of just shy of $4 million. So you can see about $1 million decrease from the prior year, mostly with the new debt taken on during the year. The tangible capital assets, so the physical assets managed by the district, have increased almost $8 million. That's the sewer project and work on Sebastian Road throughout 2020. So a large increase in physical assets being managed. And the accumulated surplus at the end of the year then is just over $62 million. And I'll show you what's in that number in a future slide. Turning then to the statement of operations or the income statement. Total revenues for the year, you can see a drop from 20 million to $10.5 million. The big thing to remember in 2019 was there was $16 million of developer contributed assets from the Foothills Estates project, which didn't repeat in 2020. That was just a timing of when those assets were taken on. So that brings your revenue down. And then you also had some increased revenues from the restart grant and some of the capital grant funding for the sewer project. So brought your revenues back up to about 10 million. On the expense side of things, $4.3 million, a small increase year over year from the 3.9 in the prior year. And on an accounting basis, an annual surplus of $6.1 million. The next document in the financial statements is what we call the change in net financial assets. So here you can see $8.1 million purchases of tangible capital assets, as I already mentioned, majority of that being the sewer project. And there's the developer contributions, which happened in 2019 and didn't, no repeat of those amounts coming online in 2020. So I mentioned that was an accounting surplus. It is not the same type of look, the same type of analysis as when you're thinking about your budget and putting those numbers together. So cash flows is a lot closer to how you're thinking when you're budgeting. So here you can see $4.6 million of cash inflow for operations. I already mentioned that $8 million of capital spending. There was $105,000 net moved into investment accounts to earn a better rate of return. We saw the $4.3 million of debt on the balance sheet. And so the main bank accounts had a net cash inflow of about $745,000 for the year. I promised I'd tell you what's in this 62 million of accumulated surplus. You can see most of it is the physical assets. So this is the $60 million of, $58 million of tangible capital assets minus the debt amount of 4.3 million. Then you've got $6 million set aside in reserves. The unrestricted general fund surplus is about $125,000 increase year over year to just over $1 million. And then the sewer and water funds, there's a small deficit in the sewer fund and a small surplus in the water fund to bring you to the 62 million and 94,000. Switching gears then from the financial statements to our audit. Happy to report again that we're done the audit. We're ready to provide an unqualified audit opinion. So that is auditor speak for a clean audit opinion. We are satisfied that your financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with the appropriate local government accounting standards. we're ready to sign the report tonight after council approves here today. And we've got all those other minor outstanding matters wrapped up this morning. So we are ready to go on and provide the audit report to your directors later. Our audit findings letter in your package. And to clarify that the financial statements are your financial statements. Staff prepares them. Our audit responsibilities is to look at the controls in place at the district to make sure that you're getting accurate financial reporting. We sample transactions throughout the year. To do that sampling, we determine a materiality number that drives the amount of testing that we're going to do. That number is $200,000. So that is 4% of a normalized revenue figure. Actually turns out to be closer to 2% of your overall revenue. On the engagement status side, we didn't find any irregularities, anything that would impact the financial statements, no evidence of conflict of interest or unusual related parties that came to our attention. We are not specifically fraud investigators. We're not looking for fraud, but if something came to our attention, I would have to bring it to your attention here tonight as council. Again, a big thank you to management and staff of the district for all their help with the audit this year. And I will wrap up confirming that we, M&P as a firm, didn't do any other projects or any other work with the district that would impair our ability to give you an independent audit opinion from the start of the fiscal year, January 1st, 2020, through to today, May 5th, 2021. Thank you very much. I will stop the sharing and I'm happy to answer any questions about the financial statements or the audit process.
Great. Thank you, Corey. That was quite the speedy presentation. Much appreciated. Council, do we have any questions for Corey? So Councillor Gusselbrack, go ahead.
Thank you. The sewer fund deficit, some $300,000. How is that arrived at and what does it mean?
Sorry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, no problem. So through the mayor to you, Councilor Gusselbrack, the sewer fund deficit is from internal borrowing for sewer phase 2. So phase 2 local area service has a certain amount of money that they borrowed from the general fund. And so as that debt gets repaid, the sewer fund deficit will decrease and will be eliminated in 2030 when sewer phase 2 is done.
So none of this, none of that deficit relates to phase 3 sewer. That's not on the books yet?
No deficit due to sewer phase 3.
Thank you.
We did regular borrowing for sewer phase 3, so it won't impact surplus at all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further questions for the presenter? Okay, seeing none. Again, thank you, Corey, for doing the audit. And I'm sure if there's any further questions, we can get staff to email those on to you. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
So in our agenda this evening, we do have a motion. So if someone's prepared to make that motion, otherwise I'll simply just do it. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. That the draft audited financial statements for the District of Lantzville for the year ended December 31st, 2020 be approved as presented by Norris Myers Penny. So that's second by Councillor Gusselbrack. Any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to item 7 of our agenda. So we have the consent agenda. So we have 3 items listed there. And any items requesting to be removed this evening? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to move. Actually, I'll just go ahead and do it. That the recommendations listed for items 7A, B, and C in the consent agenda be approved. Do I have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gusselbrack. You're quick on the draw tonight. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to a public input period. So through the staff, do we have anybody waiting to speak?
Yes, we do. We have 2 speakers, and the first one is Jason Schmidt. Both speakers are speaking on item 9B, the development variance permit for 7384 High Ridge Crescent. After Jason Schmidt, the next speaker will be Carrie Ann Cody.
Carrie-Ann Cody, okay. And then following that, Director Coates, are we going to keep them on the line? Should there be any questions when we get to 9B? Or are they going to leave the meeting?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. All right, so so for public input, we have 2 speakers. I'll call on Jason Schmidt first. And just state your name and address for the record, if you could, please.
Sure. This is Jason Schmidt, and my address is 5451 Arnhem Terrace, Nanaimo.
Okay, go ahead, Jason. And then I'm actually drawing a blank. Is it 3 minutes through to staff for public input or 2?
It is 2 minutes.
Yeah, it is 2. Okay, so you got 2 minutes, but I'm sure we can probably offer a little flexibility. So go
Sure.
ahead, Jason.
Well, thank you. I don't think I'll need the full 2 minutes. I think
Okay.
the information is pretty straightforward as presented, and really just wanted to sign up to have the opportunity to speak if there were questions regarding any specifics to the site. I'm not sure if any of you had the chance to attend the site, but it is a challenging piece of property. It's very steeply sloped, and so to situate a house on the property, we do need to put in some retaining walls, and we've sited the house kind of as low as possible. So it's actually quite a ways down from the adjacent roads, and just the way that the height calculations work on those steep sites, the house as designed is showing 0.54 meters over height. So we're just asking for a variance for that in height. And again, due to the nature of the site, it doesn't negatively affect any of the homes adjacent above or below. And we're also asking for a variance in the maximum height of retaining walls, again, to facilitate building on this difficult lot. And the rationale for that is backed up by what's been built and approved on houses that are in the foothills area, and actually just very close to that site, 2 doors down. There's one that's 4.6 meters tall. And so that's our rationale for asking for the relaxation in that maximum height.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so we'll move on to the next presenter or public input. So we have Carrie-Ann Cody. I don't see anything on. Oh, there you are. Okay. So Carrie-Ann, if you can just state your name and address for the record, please. And then you have 2 minutes.
Absolutely. So I'm Carrie-Ann Cody, address 930 Dufferin Street, also in Nanaimo. All set to start going? Good? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to speak on this evening. Brief synopsis on the project. So 7384 High Ridge Crescent will be the home of the first Dream Home Lottery in Nanaimo that will benefit the Nanaimo Community Hospice Society. This will be the first step in creating a standalone hospice that will have 9 beds, something that our community desperately needs. Our palliative care unit pre-COVID was at a 200% capacity. The Foothills development donated 2/3 of the cost of the land to this project. And while we are very appreciative of this donation, this site specifically has come with significant challenges. And as you just heard a little bit from Jason, and I'm sure you were able to see a little bit in the photos as well, but I would say that the photos don't do that slope justice at all. So in Jason's letter as well, and for momentum, there is an existing natural bench in that slope that the home will work with, which will result in a 0.54 of a meter over height. And then you just heard the rationale for the variance from his behalf and then from the projects. So I'm speaking on behalf of the project as well as the Canadian Home Builders Association. So I'm the CEO for the Canadian Home Builders Association for Vancouver Island, as well as a project liaison for Nanaimo Community Hospice. So basically we're here, Jason and I are both going to answer questions if you have any from looking at the documentation.
Okay, great, thank you. So only during public input, we don't do a question and answer period, but if you're willing to stay online, when we get to item 9B, which will be pretty quick here, if there are any questions from council, and we can direct those to you if that's okay.
That's perfect, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other is there any other public input through to staff, just in case someone needs joined?
No, we have no further
Okay,
requests.
great. Thank you. Hearing none, I'm going to move on to 9A of our agenda. So we have bylaw number 269. Is someone prepared to make the motion? And we'll have to, I guess, take them separately, but okay, Councillor Wilson.
The District of Lantzville 2021 tax rates bylaw number 269, 2021 be given first, second, and third readings.
And seconder to that. So second by Councillor Gusselbrack. Any discussion in the first 3 readings? Okay, Councillor Savage. Or sorry, through the mover and seconder, is there any question?
No, I have nothing to add. Looks good.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yeah, I won't be supporting this, just to be consistent with my principle of not hiring more staff at this time. I'd like it to be more commensurate with population increase. And the second reason is to do it during these COVID times. Having said that, I appreciate council's efforts to keep it down to 7% this year. Thank you.
Okay, any additional speakers on this item? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, the first 3 readings carry. So now we're on to adoption. Someone prepared to make that motion? So Councillor Wilson, if you may.
The District of Lantzville 2021 tax rates bylaw number 269, 2021 be adopted.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gusselbrack. We're at adoption, so there's no discussion on this. So I will simply move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed? Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, the bylaw is adopted. Okay, so that takes us on to item 9B. So we have the development variance permit application for 7384 High Ridge Crescent. Is someone prepared to make this motion? So Councillor Wilson, if you wish.
The development variance permit number DVP 21-1 for 7384 High Ridge Crescent be issued to Nanaimo Community Hospice Society.
Okay, and do we have a seconder to that? So second by Councillor Savage. Discussion on the motion. So through to you, Councillor Wilson, since you're the mover.
Well, I know the property and I can totally appreciate where they would be coming from with respect to the challenges on that site, and therefore I support it.
Okay, thank you. And through to Councillor Savage as seconder, if you wish.
Thank you. I will be supporting it, and here's why. We've been told half-acre lots and bigger can't sustain themselves economically, but we now know that's not the case. The tax assessed value of the beautiful houses in the foothills is so high, the net tax income is big, and they're all half-acre lots or bigger. This means the foothill homes are paying more than their fair share of property taxes, which means existing residents will be paying less. The high density development by comparison produce a low net tax income. So we should be bending over backwards to help the foothills in any way we can produce these high quality homes and all the parkland we're getting. And second is congrats to the engineer. I love good engineering. It was interesting how he stepped down the walls, so that was good. And a special congratulations to the Nanaimo Hospice organization. I know their work. I've seen it, and it's just wonderful. So a real win-win here. So I'll certainly be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, any additional speakers? Any questions? I believe Jason and Carrie Ann are still online. So, okay, hearing none, I'm going to move to call in the question. So all those in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. So again, thank you, Carrie Ann, Jason, for speaking earlier. Moving on to items, 9C. So we have the Union of BC Municipalities Local Government Development Approvals Program. There's a motion before us. Someone prepared to make that motion. So Councillor Wilson.
That the District of Lantzville submission of an application to the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Local Government Development Approvals Program be authorized for a grant in the amount of $38,000 by the May 7th, 2021 deadline to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the district's planning, development, and building permitting and review process.
And do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Proctor. Discussion on the motion. So through to you, Councillor Wilson, as the mover.
Nothing really, just support the motion.
Okay, Councillor Proctor is the seconder. Nothing? Okay, sorry. Didn't see anything. And through the rest of the council, any further discussion? So Councillor Savage.
No, I will not be supporting this, and here's why. Just in the past 2 months, we've had $27,000 to pay for someone to assist the planner. Second, there's a new policy where developers can hire consultants to fast track and expedite their applications. And now we're being presented with an expensive computer program to further fast track development most residents don't want. And in staff's own words, the building permit application and issuance process now typically takes 2 weeks or less, provided the application is complete and there are no BC building code issues with the proposed building plans. Prior to the transition, similar permits were taking up to 3 months to be issued. So reducing processing times by 50% by streamlining intake. So it's just like I said a few weeks ago, residents' tax money is being used to fast track and expedite development they don't want to begin with. This is great for communities that are hungry for growth and investment, but in the same vein, Lantzville has every right to choose to be a quiet, moderate density community with lots of green space and low traffic, ecologically responsible. Lantzville has no duty whatsoever to house the 55,000 annual influx of people into BC. This doesn't benefit Lantzville, nor does it benefit those who want to ensure there are still quiet communities on the island to move to. The thrust should be encouraging newcomers to settle in those communities which need and want growth. People, places like Port Hardy, Prince George, Quesnel, Terrace, Dawson Creek. We shouldn't be overbuilding the southeast coastal area of Vancouver Island. And the province will be healthier by directing this growth to northern areas which need it. Residents own their community and should control the zoning. We should not have a one-size-fits-all approach to every community. And this ties in with this because, again, it's fast tracking. The faster you process development, the more you have. And I think if anything showed residents want slow, moderate growth in Lantzville, not a fast, expedited development boom, which doesn't benefit them. And since this term began, it's been an endless expense, or quite an expense, I should say, of more and more staff. And now we're getting computer programs, and all this seems to me, as it speaks to development, is fast, fast, fast instead of slow, like residents want it. And the other problem from an economic, financial viewpoint is we're on the hook every year for annual cost, and I'm not impressed with the high price we're paying just for a computer program. It doesn't make sense to me. So, and it's also only as good as the input you put into it. What input are you going to put into it? That I don't know. So I won't be supporting it. It's just like the other two that came before us to fast track development. Thank you.
Okay, so I have Councillor Gusselbrack. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Gusselbrack. Happens to the best of us.
Always gives us a chance to think about what we're going to say. No, I for one am happy we're moving into the 21st century. And I really like the idea of the e-permitting for permits, as well as the second tranche of this monies that we're applying for. I, for one, as well, am always happy to welcome new people into the Lantzville community, no matter where they're from. And over the last 3 months, I've had the opportunity of meeting families from different ethnic groups who have moved into Lantzville, different parts of Lantzville, the foothills, and that only goes to making a stronger, more viable community here in Lantzville. So I see no problem with that. I would like to ask staff their thoughts. I have read the report, but I'd like to ask whichever staff would like to respond as to what they see the other benefits of this system and implementing this system.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councilor Gesselbrock, Director Young here. The staff report does lay out what we feel would be the benefits to this program. It's definitely hear Councilor Savage's comments related to building permits. I don't know that we're going to achieve a much quicker turnaround on building permits, but there are a lot of benefits to the applicants, as well as it provides a more convenient way for applicants to submit applications, to have engagement with the building official, to ask questions, to track the status of the application, and to schedule inspections. It provides a much easier way. Most local governments are moving in this direction, and it's helpful if we're all moving in the same direction, so we don't have, the RDN or the city of Nanaimo or Lantzville sort of on two different tracks. For example, the RDN already has an online submission portal for building permits. So really, we're just catching up to the RDN. The system we're looking at is extremely user friendly, both for staff and for the applicants. There will be no inputs required from the municipality. It is very affordable program. It's upwards of 10 times less expensive than the next most expensive software that we could possibly purchase. So the other thing that I'll just say is that there would be no tax dollars used to fund this software. Of course, I mean, the purpose of this agenda item is to seek council support to get grant funding to cover the cost for the next 2 years. Beyond that, as stated in the staff report, the cost of the software would be covered by the application and processing fees. So those would not be borne by the other residents of Lantzville. If there's just on the other half of it, so building permitting aside, the other part of it is planning and development software. So there'd be a lot of similar benefits. Depending on the type of application, I wouldn't see that it's expediting the application. For example, rezoning applications likely wouldn't be processed more quickly as a result of the software, because there's a number of statutory processes that we have to go through. We have to do public engagement. It also doesn't speed up staff's review time of that application. So it really depends on the application and what we would get out of the software. So those are just a few comments on the benefits.
I just finish off by noting that we in the legal profession have been using an e-document system for quite some time, probably in excess of 8 years. I noticed that any real estate transaction that goes through, you're signing e-documents so that your realtor's not showing up at all hours of the night to try and get you to sign. And I also know that the land titles All registrations are now done by e-documents. So really what we're doing is coordinating through the use of the the World Wide Web and electronic formatting to catch up and to coordinate and to rationalize our systems. It's a benefit to everybody. And like progress or not, this is what's happening. And I, for one, am for it. Thank you.
Director Young, did you have a follow-up? I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, there's one other piece that I would be remiss if I didn't share. This is something that is more frequently being requested. So we're starting to get building permit applicants asking, when Lantzville is switching over to an e-permitting online system, likely because, if they're also doing work in the RDN and they're getting used to that system, again, they would prefer to operate in a similar way to how they submit applications in the city of Nanaimo on the RDN.
Great. Any additional speakers? Okay, before we go to second time speakers. Okay, so Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of quick responses, please. Grants are tax dollars. That's the first thing. And the second, just like the other times, it says right in here, reducing processing times by 50%. So I'm just taking staff's words. And the third thing, please, this has nothing to do with ethnicity. And I won't have anything with that attached to my name. I've traveled the world many times, and it's not what I teach my kids. These are the influx to BC are both out of province and out of country, and the majority of out of country settle in places like Vancouver, and this displacement happens from there. My point is nothing more than it's the pressure put on housing from the influx into BC, and I don't care where they come from or who they are. The point is that the influx is the important thing, and that each community has a right to decide how much housing they have and what their community is like. And I'm merely saying it benefits those communities that are starving for growth and investment to encourage the growth there and not just cramming into the most popular spots in a little section of BC on the coast. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay, and any additional speakers to this item? Okay, hearing none, I will move to calling the questions. All those in favor and opposed? And Councillor Savage is opposed. The motion carries. That takes us on to item 10A under unfinished business. So we have the District of Lantzville Minetown Day event. So we have some additional correspondence that's being received. And there's a motion on the floor, so there's no mover or seconder required. I will just open it up for debate through to council. So would like to speak. Okay, so Councillor Savage.
Yes, I won't support this for a number of reasons. First, the Parks and Trails Committee is the right body to manage Minetown Days. In fact, the council priorities document stated to refer the farmers market, the polar bear swim, and Minetown Days to the Parks Committee. And the committee voted unanimously to continue with Minetown Days. So it's on the council priorities list. Lantzville has had a Parks Committee for decades, so it's a stable body that will always be there to draw upon for Minetown Days organizing. And last September, there were several vacancies advertised for the Parks Committee, and we had a number of candidates apply. These vacancies still haven't been filled, and now we're further sidelining or proposing to sideline the Parks Committee by unilaterally removing from the committee the task of organizing Mindtown Days. And the Seaside community, I believe, is the society, is the wrong body to organize and manage Mindtown Days. It has no history of doing so. And while the current president of the Seaside Society wants to do it, we don't know there will be ongoing interest. And since positions at the Seaside Society are done by a small group selection, the body has the potential of becoming politicized, and there's no room for politics at Mindtown Days. Mindtown Days is not a political event. It's supposed to be a community event. By contrast, the Parks Committee positions are publicly appointed, publicly advertised, and so on. And now I see there's another group, the Lantzville Community Association, who's also expressed interest in managing and organizing the Mindtown Days. They have political viewpoints, but so do the Seaside Society. I imagine every group will have political viewpoints, but there likely will be no Mindtown Days this year due to COVID, but there may be the following year. And this will be held just weeks before the 2022 election. So there's no hurry for this. I would like to entertain more applicants to see who else might be interested in doing it, and then have them present their case as to what they're offering and so on. I know with the small community grants we give, some of them as small as $200 have more information in them than what we have here. We just have a simple letter with a few sentences saying they would be interested. So we're a long way off Mindtown Days. It's almost a guarantee it won't be this year. So I think we should take our time, get the right body, and that body might be the Parks Committee still. So that's what I would like to see. And I've got an amendment to make in any event, but I'll hear from others to see their viewpoints first. Thank you.
Okay, so additional speakers on this motion. Okay, I'll speak next. That's fine. You know, in my opinion, I just don't see, you know, what's the rush in moving forward with this at this time. It's very likely that we're not going to have a Mindtown Day this year. You know, we may get back to, you know, starting to increase group functions and that sort of stuff. But in terms of group events, who knows what's going to happen in that regard. It's probably not going to resume, but maybe getting back to, you know, watching kids hockey games and soccer games and all that sorts of stuff will probably return and so on, but and public skates and those sorts of things. But in terms of large group events, I just have a hard time seeing that that's going to return back to normal come September, which isn't really that far off. You know, in terms of COVID, things are headed in the right direction, but you know, we still have the vaccination program to finish rolling out, and then following that, we'll see what happens with variants and so on. But you know, back to the Mindtown Day thing, you know, one of the big hangups I have is basically the oversight of the group. Councillor Savage already mentioned that, you know, it's important to make sure, you know, whoever's running this, it remains as an apolitical group. It's, you know, it's that simple, and I think it can have the potential, regardless whatever group takes it on, of potentially going in that direction. I would like to have some connection to it, like, or at least our council having connection to it, because again, we are, you know, spending taxpayers' dollars. You know, there's $10,000 plus there's also additional funds that are given to the district by, you know, other groups, and or not other groups, but by you know, the last number of years we've had Coors Engineering give us a sizable donation, and there's other donors as well. So just managing those monies, but I do think it needs to come back to some count and be monitored by council in some degree. Like I mentioned last meeting, I think having liaison for the Seaside Society, or returning back to that at any rate would be probably advisable, because it's, again, I know of the existence of Seaside Society. I've lived in Lantzville long enough to know what the group does and so on, but trying to find any information still is very difficult. And even how to join as a member, I can't even find that, but maybe I'm just not very good on the computer in that regard. So, for me, I'd rather just see this, deferred to a later date, even potentially back to the the Parks and Rec Committee or Trails Committee, and for further discussion. Other than that, I understand why this is, moving in this direction, as it is to take, the process away from staff and not have staff spend as much time on that. But again, I think there's a fine line or balance there with respect to how we do that. I think again, there has to be oversight from the district and from council to some degree. So anyway, so those are just some of my thoughts at this point. Again, I don't see the real need to move it or pass anything this evening. I think moving it down the road would probably be fine. So I see Councillor Gusselbrecht wishes to speak, but staff has some hands up. So we are in a debate. So I don't know if there's just some clarification regarding information or information to add. So through to Director Coates or Director Slater.
I will defer to Director Coates if there's something that's procedural.
Sure. Okay, Director Coates.
Well, I wouldn't say mine is so much procedural as it is historical. We briefly covered the history of this this item at the last meeting, and I just wanted to clarify. There was a comment that that the committee had determined that they wish to continue doing Mine Town Day. You can't hear me? Oh, okay. So I could see somebody pointing to their ear there. Okay, sorry. And I just wanted to clarify that, this has been discussed with the committee, the former commission, and then with the committee since January 2017. There has been a recurring concern from the volunteers that it's a big undertaking for the committee. And so that's why the discussion had occurred starting in January 2017 about the idea of either creating a society to run the event, or creating a special standalone committee that would run the event. And the conclusion was that it's a lot of work to create a society. And so the discussion had evolved over the years that Seaside would look at increasing their volunteers and their bylaws to ensure that they could take on that role. So this isn't anything new. I think it's something that's dragged on a bit. And I hear what you're saying, that perhaps it might be thought that a decision isn't required now. But I would ask that council consider the fact that it takes some time for us to prepare a service agreement, discuss it with the other body, go back and forth for a while. And it's important that we have an agreement in place that defines the roles of each body before anything occurs. While there's no major events allowed this summer, we are yet to hear whether a smaller scale event could be held in the fall. And the other part of this is that the planning for an event, when it is a large scale event, it starts the year before. I mean, it really moves along in January, the year of the event. But if we leave it till the fall, it's leaving it a bit late. As well, we need to incorporate that into the budget. The council will be considering, staff will start preparing that budget in the summer, comes to council in September, October. So we want it to accurately reflect and not be under a crunch to rush something through. I don't know if there's anything else. Council has any other questions on this?
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Councillor Gusselbrook?
Thank you. Yes, I don't think we can assume that there's not going to be a Minetown Days. And I take Director Coates' point that it could take a different form, but you don't pop up and, at the end of the summer and say, oh, we're going to have something. Let's see if we can cobble together some of the former people that worked on it, and maybe we can do it. No, I think we need to be proactive in this matter. And it's a great event, whatever shape it takes, for getting the public together, for old acquaintances to be renewed and new ones made. So I think we need to move ahead on this. Now, one thing I do agree with both what the mayor said and Councillor Savage is that this should be an apolitical group. So it's interesting that the current Lantzville Community Association, which has only been around for a couple of months, is actually appropriated the earlier association from 1958, which was called the Lantzville Community Association. And they were the ones who had purchased the tennis court land, the parking lot, and ultimately the Costin Hall property by I think it was by that was all 1958. That group lasted until approximately 1988, when a new organization called the Old Age Pensioners Association took over running those lands, first of all, and set up and then acquired the church property in 1990. That was basically a senior citizens group, and that started to, there was some political things happening with the province, and they were asked to incorporate, and that happened in 2007 when the Seaside Community Society was set up. Now, I know about the Seaside Community Society because since I've been on council, as well as the mayor, we have had numerous presentations by the then president, Brenda Savage, with respect to those buildings, with respect to activities, with respect to applications for grants. This goes back to March 2016, July 2016, February 2017, 2018, and we have renewed their lease on 2 separate occasions. That society has taken great strides to improve both the Costin Hall and the church. And they do that by using not only volunteers, but hiring professionals, carpenter, electricians. There's been an incredible amount, the new floors, the new washrooms, the new building, the new lighting, which makes it more and more usable for, I see in one report that there's nearly 500 different individuals with different organizations using those buildings. So I know who the Seaside Community Society is. They're no strangers. Now, I also know that in the Seaside organization, they've asked that their names be put out there, like Bob Colclough, Brenda Savage, Graham Savage, Sandra Mays have been involved as volunteers in past Minetown Days. So they've been there, and of course they always welcome more people. So coming back to my original point, I don't think this is a political organization. This is a group of volunteers. However, the Lantzville Community Association, its first act was to sue the District of Lantzville. Now, in my mind, that's a political action. And I also note that one of the 2 incorporators, in fact, the treasurer, ex-councillor Colson, was involved in 2 unsuccessful. He was involved directly and indirectly in suing his fellow councillors. So I'm sorry, that smacks of political opportunism. And for that reason alone, I wouldn't entertain their application. So coming back to the Seaside community, I think it's a good group. They've proven that they can get the volunteers together, and whatever form of Mindtown Days we have, I think they would be a group who would be able to put together the organization to make it successful. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Proctor.
Just through you to Director Slater, I was wondering if you had something to add to our discussion. You indicated earlier that you might.
Yeah, I think, sorry, through the chair to you, Councillor Proctor. That was one of the issues that I just wanted to bring forward, because there was one issue that I saw with the Lantzville Community Association, because they are in active litigation with the municipality. If we were to enter into a service agreement with that entity, it's actually outside of our purchasing policy, because our purchasing policy has a clause in there that basically says we can't, you know, subcontract or make an agreement with an entity that's involved in active litigation with the municipality. So that was what I wanted to add.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I just want to add that I have the utmost faith and respect for the Seaside Association. I did when I voted to let them look after those 2 beautiful public buildings that they've done an incredible job at. I've never seen any political activity. In fact, anytime I've volunteered with them, it has been made very clear to me that it is not political, and they don't want politics in the front door of the building. They want it to be run as a community building that everyone in the community can enjoy and everyone's comfortable at. And they've done an incredible job doing that. So I think that they are in an excellent position to run Mindtown Days. And another thing that no one's mentioned is that Julie Oley, who chaired the Mindtown Committee for, I don't know, maybe the last 5 years, is the secretary of the Seaside Community Association. And before Julie Oley ran Mindtown Days, Brenda Savage did, and she's the ex-president, the past president of the Seaside Association. So they certainly have the expertise to run it, and they have run it amongst them very well for the last number of years, in addition to doing an incredibly commendable job of running our community hall in a non-political way. Thank you.
Okay, so is there any additional speakers on the motion? Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I have an amendment to make. First, I'll just make that point too. I also would like oversight over $10,000 that's been given. So however it's structured, I want to make sure council stays involved and has oversight over the financing and getting the budget for it as well. So anyway, my amendment is to make sure it stays apolitical, meaning there's no politics involved. So my amendment is, after the very end of the motion, after the word service agreement, it has a comma, which shall stipulate that any candidate running or intending to run in a district of Lantzville local government election must not be part of organizing or volunteering in Mindtown Days.
Okay, do we have a, excuse me, a seconder to that? Okay, I'll second that for discussion. So through to you, Councillor Savage, if there's anything else to add.
No, it's just very simple. This will ensure that there won't be any politics. As I say, likely the next Mindtown Days will be just weeks before the next election, so it should remain. I've always seen it as an apolitical event for the whole community. So this is just to ensure it stays that way, because we're now switching from the very apolitical Parks Committee to another organization. And I will reiterate what I said before, and that is I've seen more thorough proposals from those applying for $200 or $300 community grants than I have with this. So thank you.
Any additional discussion on the amendment? Okay, hearing none.
Sorry,
I'll
staff,
question.
sorry. I had my hand up, but I probably thought it was up from before. I was remiss in not mentioning earlier that, in another community that I worked with, they have several major events, community events that are managed by societies that receive a grant from the municipality. And the one I was thinking of too was the farmers market, where they're using municipal land and have an agreement. And part of that includes a requirement that they not have booths or displays that are political in nature. So rather than amending for the who is delivering the event, their control piece is what's the public facing control, and that for the public, they don't see somebody out there campaigning in the middle of an event, and that there's no booth for it. So I just wanted council to be aware of that option, which has worked successfully in other municipalities. And I guess the history of the volunteers in our community that work on Minetown Day and bring their experience to it, we would be eliminating many volunteers if they can't have any can't be on council or running for council.
Okay. Any additional comments, debate on this item? Okay, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, my amendment already covers that. It says any candidates. If you're not a candidate, then it only applies to this time period before the election, a couple of months before the election. If otherwise, it's fine. That's the only time period being referred to by this. So it's just a surefire way of removing politics from it. That's all it is. And if we're all in agreement, there should be no politics, and there's zero downside to this motion, this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just speak briefly to the amendment. I understand what you're getting at, Councillor Savage, and Lantzville is a very political town. There's no doubt about it. I've witnessed it on many fronts, and it's important to make sure that any kind of event, community event, does remain apolitical. It's that simple. I just don't know if this is the right way of going about it. Hearing what Director Coates just offered in terms of the service agreement having some language in it that deals with, there not being any tables, booths, materials on site that are promoting political candidates. Maybe that's a better way of addressing this. So with that being said, I think with I did want to have a question through to staff. With the service agreement, is this something council is going to see before it gets sent on, or is this just going to move strictly between staff and the Seaside Society should this motion pass?
And there's the challenge of not being in the same room. Our conversations have been that the CAO is delegated to sign agreements. So I don't know if CAO wants to comment further on that.
Through your worship, the council would have to require me to bring that contract or the agreement to council, which certainly I'm prepared to do.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, like for myself, like, yeah, I'm gonna probably not support the amendment. However, you know, I would like to see the service agreement come back before council. And again, I'll speak that after we vote on this. So any additional comments, debate on this amendment? Okay, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, just to be clear, so I'm not, so I am clear on this. We've had two items come up. One is a purchase agreement that if someone is under a litigation with the district, it can't be involved. I believe the word was a purchase agreement, but I don't see this as a purchase agreement. We're simply having a society take over an event. And the second is the delegation and authority bylaw. I believe delegated authority for leases, but I don't see this as a lease. I see this as simply, it's called a service agreement. So I would be interested to have those two things clarified, how a purchase agreement you know, ties in with a service agreement, and then also how a lease ties in with a service agreement. It seems that.
So I'm just going to jump in right there, Councillor Savage, sorry to interrupt you, but we are speaking to the amendment, which has to do with political candidates during the planning period for My Town Day.
Yes, but this topic was
we'll vote this and then vote on this, and then we'll be back to the main motion for further discussion. Yeah. So desired.
But during my amendment, both of these things were brought up. It was Director Coates that brought this up, not me, and CAO Campbell. This was all under the heading of my amendment. So I'm just speaking.
Fair enough. I think it's probably best to speak to it under the, you know, with respect to the main motion. So my apologies for letting that go. Director Coates, I see your hand is back up again. Is that?
Sorry, no, it's still up. We'll take it down. It can go back up when the topic comes up again.
No worries. All right, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment and opposed. So noting that Councillor Proctor, Mayor Swain, Councillor Gesselbrecht, Councillor Wilson opposed, the amendment fails. Back to the main motion. So I'll make an amendment to the main motion. So if following service agreement, comma, staff provided, subject to entering into a service agreement and provide to council for review. I guess that's probably the amendment. Not very good at wordsmithing it tonight. So second by Councillor Savage. I think that gives enough direction through to staff. Debate on the amendment. For myself, with respect to the oversight piece, I would just like to see the service agreement before we enter into some sort of service agreement that basically, you know, signs over $10,000 to a society, and I'm sure the society will do good work and so forth. I just want to see the terms of it. I think we, in my opinion, we need to be providing that oversight, or at least demonstrating that we've considered that, and before we transfer that authority over. So that's just my 2 cents on the amendment. So is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? And opposed? So noting Councillor Proctor, Councillor Gesselbrecht are opposed. The amendment carries. Now we're back to the main motion as amended. Is there any further debate? Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I have another amendment, please, and that's at the end of the amended motion. It simply says, and that council shall approve the proposed budget for Mine Town Days.
Okay, I'm gonna second that and for discussion, and I hate saying that, especially if I may support it, but anyways, through to you, Councillor Savage, and then I'll speak to it second.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make sure that's a lot of money, $10,000. So it seems nothing wrong to me that councillor has that oversight just to get the proposed budget and approve it or whatever, right? It just makes sense not to just send $10,000 carte blanche at this point. That's the only reason for it. Thank you.
Okay. For myself, likely not going to support the amendment unless I hear, additional debate supporting the amendment from other members of the council. But my thoughts are as follows. Historically, and I believe this to be correct, that's never happened in the past. It was basically the budget was set by council, and then it went to the Minetown Day Committee, and away they went, and it was managed through the committee and staff. So I think this will likely be covered in the service agreement and how that all that accounting is going to be taken care of and responsibilities and so forth. So I'm comfortable with just seeing the service agreement as laid out as the main motion is amended already prior to approving it and going from, and going on at that point. So yeah, I think, council, like, we're not going to be privy to all the conversations that will be transpiring with the whatever association or takes it on, and likely be Seaside Society taking it on. So we're not going to know how they're arriving at the dollar amounts for different activities and being privy to all the research that goes on with selecting different vendors for different things. So I feel like it might be getting into the weeds a bit. If there's huge cost overruns, obviously there needs to be a mechanism in place to bring that back to council, and as well as there's other things that need to occur, like the road closure, those sorts of things that need to occur at a council level, but that's just more mechanical in nature. Is there any additional debate on the amendment before I call the question? Okay, I'm going to call the question. So all those in favor and opposed, noting that Councillor Gusselbrecht, Mayor Swain, Councillor Proctor, Councillor Wilson opposed, the amendment fails. Now we're back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Okay, Councillor Savage.
Yes, through Chair to staff, could I please get an answer to that question now, how the purchase agreement ties in with a service agreement where it says that anyone under litigation can't participate in a purchase agreement?
I would suggest that we are making a purchase. It's a fee for service agreement. We are purchasing the services of that society. So there is a contractual agreement. There is a benefit being exchanged. We're getting the community event. They're getting money. Did you want me to speak to your other question, or am I jumping ahead? Or actually, Jamie may, Director Slater may have something to add to.
I don't actually have a lot to add to that. It's essentially, it's still a service contract, and that we're going to provide the society with, $10,000 to provide Minetown Day, or to put on Minetown Day. So they're essentially still entering into a contract with the district.
Is there any further follow-up, Councillor Savage?
Yeah, that's the last thing I'll say is with this motion, we're now committing $10,000, and we don't know that's what's needed. We don't know if it can be done for less, need more. It just seems premature. So I won't be supporting this. Again, as I say, we're undermining the Parks Committee, and all those discussions that were referred to before never took place in the Parks Committee. So they were done by perhaps a few that were on the Parks Committee, but not at the Parks Committee. So at any rate, I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, so I have Councillor Gusselbrecht and then Councillor Proctor.
And staff.
Go ahead, Councillor Gusselbrecht.
You know, I'd like to say something about a previous contract to build a bus stop that didn't have a service agreement by somebody running, but you know, that would be small of me, so I won't say it.
Okay, so Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that I've been on the Parks and Trails Commission for since before I was elected a councillor, and I was present for all of the conversations that Director Coates explained. And I was also present as the alternate representative on the Parks and Trails Commission when one of the last meetings that we had before COVID, where everyone on the committee said they didn't want to be in charge of running events. They didn't understand why council was asking them to put on summer festivals, why they wanted to do us to put on music festivals. Just please take it back to council that we don't want to do that. And I personally know many of the members on the committee did not work on Mindtown days. They wanted to go to the committee. They wanted to discuss big overarching ideas for Lantzville, but they didn't want to run events. And I certainly was present for all of the conversations that Director Coates explained. Just to clarify, they happened in committee.
Okay, so Director Coates, your hand's not up anymore, but is there something?
Yes, I
Yeah.
want to echo those comments. Staff would never quote that something occurred at a committee that did not. You can be assured that we do our homework, and the table that I'm looking at that has a list of the comments that were made reference the meeting date, the commission date, or the committee date. The only thing I did not reference in this list, because it was the informal Mindtown Day working group, that the CAO attended the meeting of that group and discussed with them also the option of it being managed through another form. So that's and we don't keep minutes of those informal group gatherings. I think it was their wind-up event. So we don't have minutes of that. But everything else, please do not misrepresent that staff have somehow reported incorrectly to you. These are direct references from those meetings since 2017. Thank you.
So Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
I appreciate Councillor Savage's comment where 10,000 is a lot of money, but to run the Mindtown days, I wouldn't think that is a lot of money. Can I get a comment, please, through you, Mayor, through Director Slater, just what we've previously spent, like what the ballpark is or what we've spent on Mindtown days? Is $10,000 like way over and above what we've ever spent? It seems to me like that it's the ballpark that we've always spent.
Yes, through the chair to you, Councillor Wilson. The budget for Mindtown Days has been the same for many, many, many years. As many as I've ever seen it, it's been $10,000. A lot of times the committee will come close to spending that amount of money, but won't actually exceed the 10. And so the excess funds, always come back to the district and become part of surplus. So I mean, something like that could always be written into the service agreement. But yeah, generally speaking, the big expense that I see or that I saw when I was on the Mindtown Day committee was bouncy houses, rides, gift cards for volunteers. There's some gift cards, for the games that the kids play, the watermelon, eating contest and the nail hammering contest, all of that fun stuff. But it does all add up quickly, especially when you have, multiple vendors and traffic control. Actually, that was a big one too. Sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, do you have a follow-up, Councillor Wilson?
It did, and I can just tell you from experience that the Mindtown days for some vendors is actually a money-losing venture. It's really done just because they want to be a part of the community. So yeah, we're to pull off what we do for $10,000. I think is a really it's a really good amount. We're quite fortunate to be able to do that. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you. And just through to Director Slater, how does usually we have a corporate donation, one main one, and like I mentioned earlier, it's Coors, but usually there's a couple $1,000 in corporate. Not that we can count on that, but
Yes, that's very true. So normally, you know, the net budget for Minetown Days is $10,000, and so it's a $10,000 district contribution, and then usually a sizable donation around $2,000 from Coors, and then $1,000 of other miscellaneous donations, or you know, kind of the small fees we charge vendors to be at Minetown Days.
yeah, and nonetheless, it's, you know, it's not a ton of money by any stretch, and you know, from my in my opinion, anyways, you know, if a committee was to come back to council and ask for a little bit more money, I would totally support that, given what a great community event it is. So it's not like it's all of a sudden going to double. One year it's going to be 20,000 or something like that. But if it came back, you know, requesting a little bit more money, it's money definitely well spent. You know, for a one-day community event, we do it, you know, in the past anyway, it's the years I've been involved, it's always done very well, and excellent community events. So anyways, lots of people caring about the quality of it. So I think nonetheless, it'll be a good event when it returns. And you know, for lack of better words, completely sucked not having it last year. And just the thought about it not returning this year, it is rather depressing, to be honest with you. It's so hopefully we'll be able to cook up something, and even if it's something modified, but again, we'll have to wait and see. And you know, in terms of timing as well, like it's already May 5th, and man, like it's the planning usually is way underway at this point. So it's, you know, if anything, really behind planning for anything for September. So anyways, I don't know if there's any closing thoughts from anybody. Councillor Savage, and I'm going to call the question.
Yes, just the last quick thing to set the record straight. All I'm saying, and it's clear as a bell, is that we were referred a number of tasks to see if the Parks Committee wanted to take them on. And I believe they said no to all of them except the Minetown Days, was my point. And I did not hear any reference when I was on this current iteration of the Parks Committee, any talk of handing it over to the Seaside Society. That's all I was saying, and my comments are accurate when I say that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to
Sorry, just for staff, I should clarify that council referred to the committee to ask them about being involved in, sorry, how is it worded here? You know, having the committee work with other groups to have these events happen. There was Farmers Market, Minetown Day, Summer Beach Festival, Polar Bear Swim, and for the committee to consider working with community partners to facilitate these potential events. That this has not been decided by the committee. They have not responded yet to council. There was one item that they did look at, but they have not, it has not come forward to council. So that's why it's still on the pending strategic priorities. The plan was that when they they were considering one per meeting, and once they had considered them all, then it would be reported back to council. And the other one I should have clarified, I think there was a question about the CAO having authority to execute agreements. And I think the delegation of authority that you were recalling for issuing leases and licenses is the delegation of authority to my position, the Director of Corporate Administration. The delegation of authority to the CAO is much larger, of course, and it does include other types of agreements. He has authority to enter into agreements and contracts subject to compliance with any applicable requirements of the district's purchasing policy as adopted by council and amended from time to time, and also act as the signing officer for the purpose of executing, together with the Director of Financial Services, all financial documents and transactions. This is a bit moot because now we will be bringing it back to council too. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move to calling the question on this item. So all those in favor and opposed, Noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, the motion carries. So now we're on to item 10B. So we have the parkland as a condition of subdivision. So this is referred from the April 21st, 2021 regular council meeting. So Councillor Savage, I will hand the floor over to you. And just for council's benefit, there's additional information, just so you're aware. So go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, I move that whenever parkland or payment of cash in lieu of parkland will be required, it's a condition of subdivision per section 510, 1 and 2 of the Local Government Act, that the District of Lantzville acquires as much parkland as possible per the Local Government Act, section 510, 2B, and per Lantzville's many official community plan policies to acquire parkland, which can be in the form of natural green space or a network of greenways and multi-use trails.
So I'll second the motion. So through to Councillor Savage, discussion on the motion.
Yes, thank you. Our council priorities the document states acquire as much land as possible through development. The map of Lower Lantzville shows very, very little public green space right now. And one of the reasons Lantzville is so appealing is all the green space. The problem, this green space is private land, and as things develop, this green space will be lost. The only way to retain it is through some subdivisions. 5% park, which is provincially mandated, or we can get far more than 5% through zoning applications as supported in the OCP. The problem is parkland is not being requested. In the past few subdivisions, we keep getting cash in lieu. And when the 7.5 acre Sabrina property applied for rezoning, the developer consultant stated parkland was not wanted or requested by the district. So we got 0. Then after complaints from the public, about 7% of the land was given as parkland by the developer. Now Sabrina is subdividing under current zoning, which entitles it to 5% parkland. That's 0.38 of an acre, but we get no parkland at all, because once again, none was wanted or requested by the district. This could have provided a lovely rest area with views to the foothills on the sunny side of Lantzville Road, or a trail right off the road. So what is needed is clear instruction to acquire parkland whenever possible. And this land can be in the form of a trail, a green corridor called a greenway. It can be eventually become a manicured park, a formal trail, or just left in its natural state, or it can be incorporated into the yards of residents who will maintain it until needed. And that's a real key, that it may not be needed right away. So all this motion does is underline what the OCP, the Parks Plan, Age Friendly Plan, and Council Priorities document already say. So it's not really necessary. It's just to underline that, because I don't want to lose any more opportunities. We just cannot afford big lots subdividing without preserving some green space. And especially in Lower Lantzville, there's just so little of it now. And there's so few big lots left in Upper Lantzville to get this parkland. So this is why it's important. And we need permanent nature, not just money, because money comes and goes. What's be here for the long run is the green space we get from it. So that's all I'll say at this point. I'll hear from others. I have a few more points to make. Thank you.
Okay, so as the seconder, I'll speak briefly on this. I can actually support this. I appreciate the work Councillor Savage has put into this. It's an interesting one, and I think it's when we do look at Lower Lantzville, especially, there isn't a lot of available land to be had in terms of parkland dedication, just based on the size of the parcels and so forth. So, it's kind of funny. It's no disrespect, Councillor Savage, but when I hear about parkland dedication, all I can hear is you on my shoulder, saying it in my ear, at park or land is forever, cash is temporary, or money is temporary. And it's so true. This isn't the only table I sit at where, we have these types of discussions about parkland and the future and so forth. And it's so very important to, I think, where possible, acquire the green space or these green assets. That's the way I like to look at it. In terms of calling it parkland dedication and so forth, I think it always implies that, or parkland, you're going to do something with it like right now, and it's going to require additional monies and so forth. But I look at it as just green space, and maybe at one point in the future, you can look at it in terms of redeveloping it into, more of a usable green area or park. But I think with these opportunities as they come up, we should be seriously considering them, because we're a small municipality and we have limited opportunities. And if staff were to come back with a recommendation, say, we looked at a proposal from all angles and it just does not make sense to do any parkland dedication, well, I think a reasonable person or a reasonable council at that point would say, you're right, we'll take the money. But I think that, we should be, where possible, looking at, and when possible, looking at taking the land. Just so limited amounts of it, and looking at the growth in the area, like not just Lantzville, but in the greater Nanaimo area. There's going to be so much pressure in all our natural resources and parks. You just wait, it's coming. You'll see it this summer for sure. Not a doubt about it. And most of you probably saw in the newspaper the article about Nanaimo beaches not allowing dogs. Guess where all they're coming this summer, right? In spring, they're all coming to Lantzville. It gets out there. We got some great trails. Well, guess what happens? Our trails get inundated with people. And it's not to say people are not welcome in Lantzville. We go outside of Lantzville all the time and use natural resources in other areas. And but it's coming. The pressure is here, and it's only going to keep mounting. And whatever green space, parkland we can acquire, we should be going after it. So those are just my thoughts. Aside from that, I don't think this motion does anything more except for, hey, let's give council, first look at any of this stuff and have a chance at acquiring it if it makes sense. So those are my thoughts through to council. If there's additional comments, debate before we go for a second round. Okay, hearing nothing. Additional speakers on this item. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to then move to calling the question. Oh, sorry, I missed you, Councillor Wilson. So go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
I guess I'm trying to make sense of this motion, because to me it really seems redundant. And are we not doing that anyways when a subdivision application comes forth? Isn't that what our OCP calls for anyways? Or are we just trying to put an exclamation mark on it on acquiring parkland? And when I look at it, I appreciate Councillor Savage's comments, and I've heard him say it too. Like, cash is, well, land is forever. And I guess where I struggle is when you're only getting 5%, say, of land of a particular subdivision that's, say, smaller. What we're doing is we're putting pressure on staff that we don't have. And that money, that the cash that we get, can be utilized to go to, say, perhaps one day acquiring a larger park that makes more sense. So I guess that's where I come from with this. I appreciate that we want to acquire more parks, but I think we got to ask ourselves as a council, like, what's the goal? And is the goal that we can acquire a larger park that just makes more sense, where everything is kind of consolidated into, like, 3 places or 4 places instead of 10 places that are smaller, where really, the parks are not as efficient for our kids to play. I mean, some parks are great, a little sort of corner with a swing set, great. But as kids get older, they want to, hit a baseball around or kick a soccer ball over a larger field. And so I think that's my opinion as far as what I think Lantzville needs. I think it needs some larger parks. And so I don't see the benefit in getting 5% of the land, let's say, that we have to run around and maintain all these little plots of land when we should be trying to acquire something larger. If I can maybe have staff comment on that, Director Young, or another council member.
Is there a question for Director Young? It's just staff shouldn't be entering into the debate.
Okay, well,
So specific question for staff or information.
I'll back off. I guess I didn't really have a question there, but I'm more like just sort of laying out my thoughts. So I'm interested to hear what other councilors have to say.
So I see Councillor Gusselbrecht's got his hand up. So go ahead, Councillor Gusselbrecht.
Thank you. I think Councillor Savage said it in his presentation. He certainly said it in his materials at pages 85 through 88, that all of this is in the OCP. Acquiring green space, acquiring parkland. It's there. We know from the indemnity and delegation bylaw 172 that it's the approving officer who determines whether to take 5% parkland or cash in lieu. And I'm certain, I could ask the question, but I know the answer, that the approving officer certainly looks to his staff to evaluate whether the parcel that's being subdivided, is it in or around one of the designated parkland areas that Councillor Savage was instrumental in putting into our OCP map? Is it going to add to that area? Is it going to be usable as for recreation? There's some really bad examples of, quote, green space. And I think one of the most egregious examples in Lantzville is at the intersection of Phillip Road and Alds Road. On the south side of Alds Road, there's a little park there, probably on a good 45 or steeper angle, that has no recreational use whatsoever, except if you're contemplating an ascent on Mount Annapurna and the Himalayas. So somehow the developer, and this was done, I understand, back in the 1980s, got away with donating a cliff, when if the 5% could have gone not just for acquiring parkland or green space, but fixing up some of our parkland. Something that really sticks in my craw is the Rotary Park at the top of Peterson. We had great plans for a bump track, and half of it's not being used. When are we going to fix that up? I look behind my house here at Copley Park. It's beautiful now. The new swings have been put in because of the sewer work. Areas were cleaned up, but so if it's already in the OCP, why do we need underlining exclamation points? That's redundant, as Councillor Wilson said. Now, I have to take exception to a statement by Councillor Savage that the map of the community shows very little public green space. One area alone, the foothills dedicated park, and what's going to be dedicated, and it's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 acres, is by far the greatest area of parkland in all of the regional district of Nanaimo, by more than twice. We're talking about places like Mount Benson area. Foothills is twice that area. It's even larger than Rath Trevor Park by a third. So we have, and if you convert it to hectares, which I know everybody will love, the 1,200 would be like 485 hectares. That represents 17.5% of the total land of Lantzville. That's incredible. Someone said, oh, it's wasteland, you can't do it. No. For those of us who go up there, and I'm sure all of us have gone up there, the hiking trails, the way it connects with the woodlot. Yes, people may be coming, but when I go up there, I don't see a lot of people, but it's magnificent, and it's only going to get better, the trail system. We have to do some work, trailheads, roads. Are we going to keep out certain motorized vehicles on the bike and hiking trails? Those are issues, but we have a great amount of green space parkland. The last point I'll make is the 5% that we collect in lieu of the land. This can be used, as Councillor Wilson said, to purchase something really good. Purchase a really nice piece of land that will have multi-use recreational abilities. Let's keep our powder dry because that's the sort of thing that we want, rather than little tot lots that we just have to take care of, and we need staff to take care of them. Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers? All right, so okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yeah, there's a number of points here. I wrote quite a lengthy report, 4 pages that really addressed all these things. And the first thing is, yes, it's all underlined in the OCP, but it's not happening. It's with Sabrina, that's 7.5 acres. And the many residents spoke saying they wanted park there, and yet we didn't get it. So there's 2 things. One is when it's a rezoning, it comes before council. So we have an opportunity then to say that we want green space, but with subdivisions, they don't. And approval officers do have the right by legislation to refer to OCPs. They're also allowed to consider community input. But I brought this forward because it's not happening. And if we're going to be going through more subdivisions with no rezoning involved, then I'm hoping that we get the parks. Now, I also said in the report, we're talking about trails here. It's chock-a-block through the OCP, through the parks plan, through the age-friendly plan, through the council priorities to get trails. You cannot get trails without land. And this isn't, and especially that shape of land, only through subdivision can you get a long, thin strip that becomes a nature trail or a bike trail. And this idea of the foothills, what I've said was in Lower Lantzville, there's hardly any green, and we're not going to have any green in Lower Lantzville unless we acquire some through subdivision. So, and the idea of driving, you shouldn't have to always drive to parkland. The whole idea of neighborhood trails and green corridors is you can walk with your kids from your house. I'm lucky that I'm close to trails, but many others aren't. So we want more of the trails. Now, a real key are the financials, this idea that we can convert the cash in lieu to bigger pieces of land. Well, you can't really, it's not an equal translation. And the reason I inquired about getting some examples of cash in lieu. And the only one I got was the one on EB. And I worked that out, which I sent in again, what I found out. And if you take the 45,000 we got cash in lieu, extrapolate that to per acre, that comes to what we got was 389,000 an acre. If you take the 2021 tax assessed value of the land there, that comes to $987,000. So what we're getting paid for the cash in lieu cannot buy the equivalent land. So we're losing that. And the usefulness of it on a place like EB, it could have bordered EB Road, had a nice corridor there. It could have been incorporated into yards. People would have maintained it until needed. And some of it could have been lawn, just like was proposed for the Sebastian Park, for overflow parking on EB Road, Beach Road end, it could have provided parking. That opportunity is gone now. And the same with Sabrina, that opportunity is gone for the trail corridor it could have been, or rest area and so on. So these are not little rectangles of park. These can be long, thin pieces of trail or greenways, they're called, to allow wildlife corridors, bike trails, whatever. And you're not going to have any trails in Lower Lantzville if we keep taking cash in lieu. So that's my point. So it's just a question of perspective. You either want to acquire as much green space as you can throughout Lower Lantzville, which means you acquire all the green space you can through subdivisions so you get these trails. Otherwise, we're going to have zero trails. Everyone's going to be walking on sidewalks and no trail experience with the age-friendly plan calls for and so on. Plus, our council priorities, as you recall, said acquire as much land as possible from development. We're not. So while this is underlining what's already in the OCP, it's not happening, is my point. So that's all I'm asking, is to underline or reaffirm that yes, we do want the parkland when we can get it, and it be any shape whatsoever. It doesn't have to be little.
Okay, so it's being a Councillor Savage, point of order has been called to Councillor Proctor.
Councillor Savage has talked for way longer than our procedural outline.
Yeah, to be quite frank, I wasn't timing his speaking time. So I think Councillor Savage, you were probably reaching your 3 minutes on the second round. So, or maybe over, but anyways, we'll move to Councillor Wilson. If there's an opportunity to speak again, you'll have additional time. So go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I take issue a little bit with the fact that staff is not, we're saying that Councillor Savage is saying that we're not actually going after parkland now. I think that we are. I also, back to what I said before, having a lot of 5% little tracts of land all over the place, the opportunity to say sell those 5% tracts of land to get something larger, greater, bigger down the road won't be there. Who's going to buy? Is that owner going to buy back that 5% worth of land? I don't think so, because they know that we would never be able to utilize a lot of those little small tracts down the road. And then also, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it like really to acquire as much parkland, the developer of the property, if they adhere to the current zoning, they have to only give up 5% as it is right now. We can't get any more than that unless the zoning is changing and we're granting them, say, more density. That's just the way I understand it. So if I'm wrong on that, then please someone tell me, but it would be nice, yeah, to get bigger parks and certain areas around the community for sure. And I think as a council, that's why we give staff direction on the stars that we put on the map when we did our strategic planning, and that's within the OCP. All of that is identified. For me, this seems like it's an agreement on top of an agreement. It's already there. Staff already has the direction. Personally, I think that we need to go after something much bigger, larger, magnificent, in Lower Lantzville, and maybe we'll get that opportunity down the road. That's all I have to say.
And through to Councilor Wilson, I believe your interpretation is correct with respect to the 5% parkland dedication if no rezoning is required. So if they're following current zoning. And jump in, Director Young, if I've misspoken. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Good. So I did have a question through to staff. I'm trying to find the information on Sabrina. You know, obviously if they're following current zoning, this doesn't come to council. So I am curious to, with the Sabrina subdivision, what ended up happening there. So I don't know if staff is able to provide that info. I just can't seem to find it. I don't know if it's in the materials. I just can't seem to locate it.
Your worship, Director Young here. So the proposed subdivision on Sabrina and Sunbury, the owners have applied to subdivide under the current residential 1 zoning. There is no proposed park identified in the OCP on map 5 of the OCP in that location. And so the approving officer is requiring cash into the parkland.
And if we were to take the 5% park land dedication, what would that be approximately for in terms of acres?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have that number.
Oh, okay. Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just curious, and I understand the nuances of our OCP and the parkland, you know, identification on the map and so forth. I just know for myself, I'm becoming increasingly more aware of how important these little parcels really are, and not every little parcel needs to be developed, needs to be manicured or anything. I think it's like saying with Sebastian Park, we have to basically do something with it. And as far as I'm concerned, in its current state, I think it's a wonderful park. It's preserved green space, has a bench in it. So, you know, that's kind of what we're talking about here is acquiring these small parcels. There's not a whole lot of them that are going to be coming up. And I honestly am of the opinion, I don't think these small amounts of money we're going to be collecting along the way are going to be enough to purchase something more significant down the road. So a little bit here, a little bit there. I understand the logic of that, but I think it's also about trying to create these green corridors, whether we develop them or put paths on them or a tot lot. I know the tot lot dilemma in other municipalities, you know, it's a great idea to have a little playground in every neighborhood, but at the end of the day, they very rarely get well utilized, and they just sit there, and then eventually the equipment needs to be replaced or overgrown and require maintenance. But to me, it's just about acquiring, you know, the green asset, essentially the land. It's there forever, whether we develop. I see your hand, Councillor Wilson. Yeah. So I think I think it would be wise of us. I just don't know if this is, you know, right now the mechanism is there is none. Like in terms of Sabrina, if you're not paying attention and checking out the website and seeing what subdivision proposals are up and what's going on, you're really not in the know. And you know, I'm the mayor of Lantzville, and I don't really know what's going on in Sabrina. But again, it's not business that concerns us. It's the, you know, basically it's in the domain of staff and the subdivision approving officer, and it doesn't require us. But I am starting to change my tune on that, and as councillors, we're allowed to change our minds on things. And to me, this is just one of these things that's becoming more important, is trying to acquire green space. And I understand we have a lot up in the foothills. I get it. There's a Stanley Park up in the foothills. There's a lot of land, but it's not very usable for a lot of people. You have to have pretty high level of physical functioning to be trekking up there. And if you're so fortunate to have that physical ability, well, enjoy it, because it's beautiful. It's, you know, it's a great natural asset that we have here in Lantzville. But these little parcels, especially in the lower part of Lantzville and even some parts of upper Lantzville, if we can acquire little bits here and there, great. But I don't think we're going to be acquiring hundreds of these tiny little strips of land or plots. It's really, we're talking probably a few, maybe half a dozen or a dozen at most. Okay, that's all I have for now. Councillor Wilson?
Just a quick question here for Councillor Savage, and then I'd follow up. But I think Councillor Savage, I'd have to scroll through what you wrote, but I think you said there was 5 properties that were more than, I think, 7 acres. Is that what you indicated? I think. I don't have it. I mean, I could scroll through, but.
Yes, in Lower Lantzville, I mentioned that there's Huddlestone, Jenna, Peterson, Rotary, Sebastian, and the strip of trail on Dickinson Road. And that's 4.39 acres in all of Lower Lantzville, plus there's 2.32 acres of crown land off Jenna up in that area, Owen and Jenna area.
Okay, and so 4 point whatever. Okay, I can't really remember that. I think this comes down to, I'm getting feedback. Sorry, Councillor Savage, if you could please mute yourself. I think it might be you. I think this comes down for council and for the community that, you know, we can't have our cake and eat it too. At the end of the day, we have to recognize that within Lower Lantzville, Councillor Savage has identified, he's great. Like I get it. And I'm with you, Councillor Savage. We don't have a lot of little plots of land to put green space in Lower Lantzville. So how are we going to acquire green space that all of our current residents can enjoy and the new residents? And not only that, how are we going to acquire some more money from these little pocket developments that is going to go towards maybe purchasing larger tracts of land for a park? And that's going to be by allowing a little bit more density on those particular areas so that we can have more green space in those places. Because right now, all of these developments, all they have to give us is 5%. That's it, based on their current zoning. And if we haven't identified that a park is going there or here or on any of those tracts of land, then we're not giving staff as a council direction on where we want those parks to within those certain areas. We have given them, yes, they have direction in some of the areas. But yeah, now I'm thinking back to the Sabrina Road subdivision. Now that Mayor Swain is asking about it, in my head I'm thinking, oh geez, would it be nice to have a little park there for sure? But we voted against that, and there was no park identified there, and so that's what we're now going to live with, more than likely. So I think maybe as a council, we should be very mindful when these particular tracks come up, for the applications come up with respect to wanting parks in those locations and walkability and green space, maybe getting a little bit more density to pay for the infrastructure that's already in place, the sewer and the water that's surrounding that property. Get some more DCCs for Lantzville so that we can do more in the surrounding areas for our community. So just something, food for thought for the future.
Okay, Director Young. I saw your hand up. Oh, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was hesitating as to whether to contribute, but I you know, essentially there are some options for council that might be helpful.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I was sorry to interrupt. I was actually going to ask about options and how to best proceed, because I did want to clarify one point I think made by Councillor Wilson just regarding Sabrina. The only reason there's no parkland coming our way is because it's not indicated on the OCP map. Has nothing to do with the previous application.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. So yeah, so Director Young, I did want to, that was going to be one of my next questions was, you know, what is council to do if, you know, if we are interested in trying, and I'm not saying like with all subdivisions that we want to take parkland, but it's, I think what I'm hearing from Councillor Savage is he just wants to have that, or have council have that option. So, but anyways, I'd like to hear, yeah, what you have to say in terms of, you know, what options council could possibly have.
Yeah, so I mean, the resolution that's on the council agenda will not change anything. If it's passed, it's not going to result in any change in the process or practice. But if council has a desire to have more dedicated parkland and also to be able to put money away as cash in lieu of parkland, there's really two ways you can do that. You can do it through amenity zoning. So you can say, for example, in the residential 1 zone, the minimum parcel area is actually 1 acre. And if you want to go to half-acre lots, well, you need to provide 5% of the land as dedicated parkland, and you need to provide 5% as cash in lieu. So essentially, you're increasing the amount of parkland that you're acquiring as part of the development as an amenity through amenity zoning under the Local Government Act. That has implications, obviously, for the cost of development and developers, but it is an option. The other thing that you can do that I've seen other communities do is our parkland development cost charges. If there are some, Kelowna as an example, they do not take parkland dedication, whether it's cash in lieu or actual parkland dedication. What they do is they have really high parkland DCCs, and that allows you to acquire more money as part of developments that can be used for acquiring parkland and constructing parkland facilities. So if you have higher DCCs in combination with more dots on the map to say that we want more parkland dedication in certain areas, well, you can do that as well. Again, those are higher costs for development, but those are two viable options for council to essentially have. I heard a reference earlier to having your cake and eating it too. Well, technically you can. You can acquire parkland dedication and get cash in lieu.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any further questions for Director Young? Okay, Councillor Wilson, yeah, go ahead.
So what do we need to do to institute that then? Do we need to give direction through Mayor to Director Young that we would like, yeah, we want that? Or is that under the Local Government Act? I'm sure there's maximums that you can ask for, but hearing that from you, yeah, I think that'd be great. What's the next steps?
Yeah, through the Mayor to Councillor Wilson. So there are no maximums identified in the Local Government Act for amenity zoning. But what is established through case law is that you can't make the base density so unreasonable that people wouldn't really, in normal circumstances, have the opportunity to apply for that. So if you make the minimum parcel area 5 acres, well, then that's probably unreasonable. They have no option but to try and achieve the higher density and provide the amenities. But what would need to happen is council would need to pass a resolution initiating a change to the zoning bylaw to essentially amend those residential zones to have both a base density, so minimum parcel area without the provision of amenities, and then a higher density or lower minimum parcel area if you provide amenities. So essentially, it's a change to the zoning bylaw, but we need council direction to do that work.
Okay. Any follow-ups, Councillor Wilson?
The feedback and answer. Thank you.
Okay. So, in the other discussions or that I've heard with respect to parkland acquisition is, using your DCCs, and I'm just kind of looking at our DCC info sheet. Oh, this might be the wrong one actually, because it says 2007. Oops. So, sorry, Director Young, not to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you know offhand or you can quickly access it, but what is our parkland DCCs at right now?
Just give me a few seconds.
Sorry, not the reserve, but just like how much per dwelling, what's the charge for just park?
I'm just looking at the bylaw. Just give me a few seconds.
Sorry, I thought I was on it and then I clicked on the wrong link.
It is so for single family residential development, so per lot created through subdivision, it's $1,494.
Yeah, and the only reason I bring this up is because we know the cost of land right now is just through the roof, and
And when we, look at getting cash in lieu of it, it just seems like it's an impossible task to, how many, little subdivisions do we have to do before we acquire enough money to do a meaningful purchase? Just up the road for me, a 1 acre waterfront with a steep slope is $1 million. And you don't have that access really to the beach. So, there's other parcels that come up for sale in Lantzville, even with a house, maybe a tear down, but you're into it for 700,000 really just for the land. And then you got the demo costs on top of that. So to me, it just seems like it's really out of reach. But, one thing I think we can look at is our DCCs at some point. And, if council thinks we should have more parkland, then perhaps we look at our DCC bylaw. And again, we have to justify it, what the DCCs would ultimately be based on what we have identified. But perhaps Director Young can speak to it more. I see you probably do want to speak to it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just one other notable absence from our DCC bylaw, since you brought it up, you asked about the single family residential. The provincial guidance documents actually say that you can charge DCCs for commercial, institutional, and industrial development, because the employees that would be, working at those types of developments, presumably will also use parkland. Right now, we don't charge DCCs for commercial, institutional, and industrial. And on the one hand, you want to be careful not to, put up barriers to small business and commercial activity. As council is likely aware, you've initiated a no CP and zoning change for the Superior Road lands for light industrial and service commercial. If there is development that ultimately happens on that property, if the zoning is adopted by council at some point in the future, well, amending your DCC bylaw in advance to require DCCs for some of those larger industrial and commercial enterprises that could afford to pay those DCCs is a significant opportunity to acquire a significant amount of cash for parkland acquisition and facility construction.
Thank you. And I just wanted a real brief comment. I was having a conversation with an elected official today, and it's very interesting because it all boils down to one thing: the cash has got to come from somewhere. And so the conversation I had earlier today, went in a direction of the concept of DCCs. But again, as local governments, we have to figure out where we're going to get the money. And then once we figure that out, go after it and create the policies, bylaws, whatever we got to do to make that a reality. But, if you're asleep at the wheel, it's all going to be missed opportunity. The amount of pressure we're seeing in our region, these opportunities to try and acquire land are gonna slip us by because it's just going to get unattainable. It's like the movie Avatar and getting unattainium. So it's we have to be on the ball. So Councillor Wilson.
Hey, this has been a really good discussion and mind-opening for me. So I appreciate it. I also want to make it clear, I appreciate that there's a certain demographic that we also need to understand. I look at, for example, my parents. Their mom's almost 70, dad's 70. They'll probably be upset for me for saying this in a council meeting, but they like their big yard. But people that are, I know many Lantzville residents that are about 10 years younger than I am, maybe a few more. They don't want a yard. They want to go kayaking. They want to go hiking. And we don't have really a lot of affordable options for people within Lantzville. So let's be mindful of that going forward. We have a year and a half here just when we're looking at, I think what Councillor Savage wants, parks, more open green space for people to enjoy. I'm for that, but we have to probably, get some more cash or maybe be okay to having a few homes in a certain place in order to allow that to happen in Lower Lantzville. So there's not a lot there. Councillor Savage is right. So I won't be supporting his motion for the simple reason that I think it's already really stated within the OCP, but I am very, very interested in exploring what Director Young spoke about today with having DCCs with respect to acquiring parkland, with respect increasing that perhaps with our current DCCs on residential, and also looking into that for industrial and commercial. So great conversation, but I won't be supporting this motion tonight.
Okay, so I see Councillor Gusselbrock, you have your hand up.
Yes, a fascinating discussion, lots of good points for the future, but I think we've strayed from this motion, and I'm going to be requesting that we call the question.
I think your request is fair. So Councillor Savage, unless there's new information, I'm going to be moving to call it.
Yes, there is. It's very important. I haven't made this point yet, and if I may, and that is this idea of these stars on the map. It's right. They came from the 2008 Parks and Trails Recreation Plan. It says right in that plan, it is important, it refers to these stars. It said it is important to keep in mind that indicating these areas of interest in this plan does not preclude the district from considering other areas or lands if opportunities arise to acquire them. It does not limit it to those stars. And then it also says the district's objective is to shape these parks into a cohesive system with trail and/or greenway linkages. And this is again supporting the idea of parks elsewhere. And you asked the question earlier on there, Swain, how big the Sabrina Park would be, and that's 0.38 of an acre. And it doesn't come from the applicant. The request has to come from the district, which wasn't done. That's why we're not getting any park.
Appreciate that, Councillor Savage, but the question has been called. I feel like we've had sufficient debate, and I'd agree with Councillor Wilson and I guess Councillor Gusselbrock. It has been a really good discussion, and I hope what will come of this is some, not this evening per se, but some subsequent motions of council and to look at other funding options when it comes to parkland acquisition and so forth. So with that being said, I'm going to move to calling the questions. So all those in favor, and then opposed. So noting that Councillor Proctor, Councillor Gusselbrock, Councillor Wilson are opposed, the motion fails. So that takes us on to item 12. So under 12A, so mayor and council verbal updates. I guess I'll lead it off. I've got nothing. We'll go to Councillor Proctor. If you wish. Nothing. Councillor Gusselbrock.
Thank you. Just want to thank both Sharon Ahokas and Lynn Kropanak, who are inveterate broom busters, for a great display of energy, busting broom on Harwood Road at the entrance to Spence's Way. They were out there with another group of volunteers for approximately 2 hours, and there's a lot of broom on the side of the road, and it really looks good.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wilson. Yeah, Councillor Savage. And I did kind of skip over one small thing. I just wanted to pass on my thanks to staff for also putting it onto the Lantzville Facebook page. It's just the notice regarding the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls day. So thank you for doing that. I did submit some photos, but they replaced them, so I'm not a very good photographer. Obviously, that's why they went with their own photo. But again, much appreciated, and recognizing today is an important day. So we'll move on to item 12B. So we have under leak adjustment request utility account 0040973202500. This is for 7415 Lantzville Road. So I'll just make the motion that the request for adjustment to utility account
1973-2025-000 for land or for 7415 Lantzville Road be authorized in an amount of $1,030.62 in contravention of District of Lantzville Policy 3006-2 and open bracket request for leak adjustment policy close bracket. So do we have a seconder to that? So a second by Councillor Gusselbach. Discussion on the motion. I don't know if I see Director Spears has joined us, and we still, I think, have Director Slater. I don't know if staff have anything else to offer. I think the report lays it out quite simply for us. So
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to what was written, but.
okay, and then through to council, any questions, debate on this particular item? It's not the first time we've had this, and I guess to the property owners, looks like they took pretty swift action on this as soon as they were made aware of having a leak. So, and it sounds like they incurred their own expense in having to fix that, which is obviously their responsibility. But I don't think anybody goes asking for a leak, and this is one of these times as a council we can exercise a little bit of compassion and towards people's financial issues and or constraints and do the right thing. So I'll definitely be in support of this as the mover, but any additional speakers on this item? Okay, hearing none, I will move to call in the question. So all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So that's introduction to late items. So here we are under 13A. Just got to grab it here. So this was added to our agenda as a late item. So what we have to do is vote to consider it as a late item. And I'll just, I think everybody has the motion. So I'll just read it out, that the additional $55,000 be allocated to the Village Core Streetscape Improvement Capital Budget in 2021, and further that the 2021-2025 Financial Plan Amendment be brought forward to amend the Village Core Streetscape Improvement Capital Budget in the 2021 from $515,389 to $570,389 with funding from gas tax. So that's what we're voting on adding as a lead item. So any debate on that? Or did I get a seconder? I need a seconder. So it's seconded by Councilor Proctor. Any debate on this item? And this is just added as a late item. So this isn't to debate the motion per se, just the addition as a late item. Okay, so I'm gonna call the question. So all those in favor? So that's carried unanimously. Okay, so now already read the motion, but I'll just move the same motion. And Councilor Proctor, you're okay being the seconder again? Okay, so Councilor Proctor seconding. Discussion on the motion. At this point, I believe staff was going to provide a bit of a verbal, and I believe that's probably why Director Spears is on the call, as well as Director Young. So I'll get staff to introduce this motion or this request for additional funding. So through to you, whoever wants to go.
Yes, Your Worship. I guess I'll start it off. So basically, what's happening out front of the district office there is that some of the asphalt in the area was found to be less than favorable for the conditions that we're putting it through right now with the heavy equipment and stuff like that. So a lot of it has been chewed up and is breaking away. So there's approximately about $30,000 worth of asphalt upgrades that will need to happen. Whether it happens with this project, it'll have to happen in the near future. But as it is right now, it would be far better to put the curbing and all of the other stuff in on top of new asphalt rather than what's there. So we're coming to council to ask for that extra funding. In addition to that, there is some modifications made to the poles, the basis for the poles that required extra engineering and extra costs as well. So there's several combining things that it has accumulated to make that 55,000.
Okay, thank you. Anything additional from staff? Okay, and through to council, any questions for staff? And okay, and so any debate on the motion or the request? Okay, so Councillor Savage.
Yes, there are some considerations with approving this 55,000. It's good to see staff trying to work out the parking situation with businesses. It seems the new driveway designs are more in keeping with what the Salzier and the Haim building wanted, so that's appreciated. However, we're 170,000 over a $400,000 budget. That's a 42.5% increase. I think all of council was sincere in wanting to improve the village, so I'm hoping there are many elements of success, like being safe for pedestrians with this project. I did not vote for the last village streetscape budget increase of 115,000. However, that was before work started. You can't desert a project once it's started, but if I'm going to support the extra 55,000, I would like to see a simple condition attached, and that is to continue trying to solve the parking situation with businesses. So the amendment I will propose, please, is at the end of the motion, just add the words, with the condition staff continues to strive to solve the parking issues with businesses where possible.
Okay, so I'll support the amendment or second the amendment. Perhaps staff, if able, can even just provide council with a brief update on where we're at in relation to any parking issues or ongoing design issues or what have you. I don't know what staff can communicate out at this point, or if anything at all. So
Your worship, just through to council, where staff continuously are in contact with commercial property owners concerning parking. Our desire is to get increased parking anywhere we can.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And as far as I'm aware, like we're far enough into this project now. I don't know if they started cutting asphalt on the district side of the road, or like the whatever, the district office side of the road today or not. I know it's being marked out, but it seems like a lot of it's underway, and it's, I think the design is final in terms of how things are moving forward. So yeah, so I think in terms of the amendment, I don't know if I'll be necessarily supporting it, because the staff is, like they've already said, they're in contact with any commercial building owners and working with them to try and remedy any concerns. Suppose there's no harm in the amendment. Actually, can I have the amendment read back, please? Unless you need to read it again, Councillor Savage, your amendment.
Yes, I'll read it again.
Through to staff, yeah, but
it just simply says with
So,
the.
sorry, I was reading. I was.
Oh, okay, no worries.
I was talking away. Anyway, so moved and seconded that council amends the motion on the floor by adding, with the condition that staff continues to strive to resolve parking issues with businesses.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you, appreciate that. All right, so additional speakers on the amendment.
Sorry, it's just a point of information, please.
Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
The end of the motion, I'll read what the motion says. It says where possible at the end there. So it simply says, with the condition staff continues to strive to solve the parking issues with businesses where possible. Okay.
And as a seconder, I'm fine with that. So, okay.
Thank you.
Debate, comments. So Councillor Savage.
Yes, the idea of this is as staff are already, they've been striving and working hard to solve the parking issues. Evidence is already, they've, as you can see by the updated map, they have worked on the driveway formation, and I believe have put a second driveway into Sal's Ear. So they are already doing this. It's just as stewards of this project, we're giving comfort to those businesses that are concerned, those residents concerned. We're simply giving comfort that yes, we are all on board with continuing to strive to solve the parking issues where possible. That's all the motion is. Okay, thank you.
Through Councillor Wilson.
I think I already have the confidence that that is happening. So we see that we don't, we trust the professionalism of staff. We don't need to hang that over their head. They're doing their job. They're already doing it. Yeah, I won't be supporting the amendment because it's already happening. It's unnecessary.
Okay, additional speakers on the motion or the amendment, sorry. All right, yeah, and I think I said earlier, I probably wasn't supporting it, but at this point I will support it simply because it just puts it in writing that that's what we're doing, so, or directing staff to do. So it doesn't mean that they're not competent or not doing it. It just means that if someone were to pick up the minutes of this meeting, they'll recognize quite easily that you know, that's the direction that's been given from council to the staff, and as the end of the amendment has where possible. So it's not always going to be possible to make changes to appease everybody. So I'll be supporting the amendment. Any additional debate on this item? So I'm just calling the question on the amendment. So all those in favor, so only Mayor Swain's in favor. Okay, and then opposed. And Councillor Proctor's opposed, Councillor Gusselbrecht, Councillor Wilson. So the amendment fails. So we're just back to the main motion. And unless I'm hearing any new information, I'm just simply going to call the question on this one. Okay, hearing nothing new, I'm going to call the question. So all those in favor and opposed. Okay, noting that Councillor Savage is opposed, the motion carries. And that takes us on to item 14, introduction of notices of motion. Oh, sorry, any additional late items to be considered? Should ask that first. None, okay, and any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none, moving on to adjournment. So we've completed our agenda, so I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.